Obviously, there's no stock of flour left. We had a small quantity coming from Tripoli, but it was taken back. We saw it on TV being brought as far as Sirte. We saw that the leader said the flour could come to the east, and then the flour was turned back by those highway bandits of his.
The World Food Programme is calling for urgent and safe access to Libya after a ship carrying vital food aid was unable to dock at the port city of Benghazi on the Mediterranean coast due to security concerns. The WFP has launched an emergency operation costing more than $39 million to provide much-needed food aid for Libyans inside the country and those who fled into neighbouring Tunisia and Egypt.
We were getting reports from those crossing the border into Tunisia just earlier this week about food being used as a potential weapon. We heard that some of Gaddafi's supporters were trying to deny some of the rebels food in certain areas. I mean, if they see any food trucks coming in, they may be able to stop them. And this is the last thing we want to see, of course, because food should be available to everybody.
Libya relies on food imports. A staggering 90% of all food supplies come from abroad. Many foreign workers are employed in farming and food production, but with migrants fleeing in their thousands, food supplies are suffering. But it's not only food. In 2000, more than a quarter of the population did not have access to safe drinking water. Global food prices have already reached new highs this year and could suffer the impact of further oil price spikes amid turmoil in Libya and the Middle East. Skyrocketing food prices were among the triggers for protests in Egypt and Tunisia. And once again, they're playing a central role in revolution. Tim Friend, Al Jazeera.
Now, hundreds of protesters have clashed with police in Egypt's northern city of Alexandria. Several people were injured. They attempted to storm a building which houses the state security agency. Firebombs were hurled and police cars set ablaze. Demonstrators say officers inside the building were trying to destroy documents linked to human rights abuses carried out by the agency during the rule of ousted President Hosni Mubarak. And in the capital, Cairo, Egypt's former interior minister has pleaded not guilty on charges of money laundering and profiteering. Habib El Adli was arrested last month and is also widely blamed for being behind brutal attacks by security forces on protesters during the recent uprising. Well, Al Jazeera's Shireen Tadros has been following the case in the capital. Shireen, what's the background to the case and what happened in court today?
Well, it was a very short proceeding. The charges were read out, two different charges, one of money laundering, one of profiteering. Habib El Adli, the former interior minister, said, very clearly and plainly, this didn't happen. I didn't do it. So he pleaded not guilty and then was taken out of the courtroom just behind me here and then taken back to prison where he'll remain until the trial, in fact, begins next month. The 2nd of April is the date that's been set. And as he left the courtroom, he was mobbed by dozens of people who were shouting and chanting at him, saying, execute him. Now, the judge who's presiding over this particular trial is known to be pretty tough. He was the one that was behind handing a death sentence last year, if you'll remember, to a business tycoon, Hisham Talat Mustafa, for his involvement in the murder of a Lebanese singer. However, in this particular trial, in the trial of Habib El Adli, the maximum sentence would be 7 years because the charges are financially related rather than any other criminal charges.
Shireen, are we likely to see other former regime members stand trial like this? Because, of course, that was a big demand of the protesters, wasn't it?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, first came the ousting and now really comes the justice. And that's what people here have been asking for. They say it's very well that these people have been taken out of power, but now you need to hold them accountable for what they've been doing for the past 10 years or more. And indeed, the process initiated by the justice system here and the general prosecutor is in full swing. There are other former ministers as well as businessmen, in fact, who have started this procedure. The first of it is travel bans and freezing of assets. We've seen many former ministers, in fact really the main cabinet ministers in former President Hosni Mubarak's cabinet will be having the same fate. Two other ministers who were arrested at the same time as Habib al-Adli will also be standing trial. Ahmed al-Izz, the business tycoon, and also the man who was a senior member of the National Democratic Party. He, within the next few days, will have the same fate. So, of course, all of these people watching very closely these proceedings and what will happen to Habib al-Adli to have some indication as to their fate too.
All right, Shireen Tadros there in Cairo. Shireen, thank you very much. To Somalia now, and more than 50 African Union peacekeepers have been killed in fighting there in the past 2 weeks. The deaths come amid a major offensive against Islamist al-Shabaab fighters who control large parts of the country and the capital, Mogadishu. A large proportion of those killed are believed to be from Burundi, one of two countries which provides the bulk of soldiers there. It's a large death toll for the AU, which normally keeps casualty numbers under wraps. The US Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, has condemned the killing of at least 6 women in Côte d'Ivoire. They were taking part in a rally calling for President Laurent Gbagbo to accept November's election result and step down. Here's Imran Khan.
Dancing, singing, the message is clear. Gbagbo must go. It's a light-hearted demonstration. The women use leaves to symbolically brush away his regime. Then this. These pictures were taken on Thursday and could mark the turning point in the disputed elections of Côte d'Ivoire. 6 women were murdered. You can clearly see camouflage vehicles drive through the crowd. The UN claimed that these were pro-government forces. That's denied by the Gbagbo loyalist army, who said that they were not operating here in Abobo. Many fear that more incidents like this could drag the country into civil war. Kofi Annan, the former UN Secretary General, says Gbagbo must step down.
The pressure is on, and I think if the population sustain their efforts, maintain the pressure for him to go, he eventually will have to go. Other leaders said they weren't going, but they are not around.
The situation has led to widespread panic. On Friday, many rushed to withdraw money from banks. Others are fearful thousands could die. Imran Khan, Al Jazeera.
Italy's Prime Minister, Silvio Berlusconi, is back on trial on alleged corruption charges. He's accused of fraud and embezzlement over the acquisition of television rights on his Mediaset media empire. He had his immunity from prosecution largely withdrawn in January. He faces a separate trial in April on charges of paying for sex with an underage nightclub dancer and allegedly trying to cover it up. He denies the charges. 3 executives jobs back after their boss admitted a spying scandal may have been a hoax. In January, Renault lodged a legal complaint over suspicions of spying targeting its high-profile electric vehicle program. The French finance minister is warning Renault it's been duped. In New York, an investment fund manager has pleaded not guilty to leading the largest insider trading ring in history. Rajaratnam is accused of soliciting information from workers at publicly traded companies. Prosecutors say the founder of the Galleon Fund made $45 million. Also in New York, a case of high anxiety. 2 workers were left dangling 12 stories up the side of a skyscraper when the scaffolding they were working on collapsed. In the U.S. state of Arizona, more murder charges have been filed against the